Holy shit! Hey, what's going on, friends? I just finished Halo Infinite, and I wanted to get my thoughts out there on this polarizing game. After having beaten the single-player mode in about 20 hours, I want to share some of my criticism with a highly anticipated title in this legendary franchise. Oh man, myself along with millions of other Halo fans around the world just waited over 6 years to play the next game in this long-running franchise. And I have to say, I'm very conflicted on this one. I will not be going over any spoilers in the story, as I believe the story should be experienced firsthand. Halo is known not only for its excellent gameplay and FPS combat, but also equally, I would argue, for its story. This sci-fi epic has been with us for 2 decades, and its 6th mainline installment does a lot of things right, but I find it fails to deliver a focused and coherent campaign and really loses its drive the further you get into it. All the gameplay captured for Halo Infinite in this video has been captured by me while playing the PC version of the game. And if you notice the game's graphics aren't as good as you thought, well, that's because I was playing it on my GTX 980 video card, one that I am eagerly wanting to swap out for a better grade card once more become available in the market. Due to this, I could only run the game on its medium settings, and this footage does not reflect the very best this game has to offer in the graphics department. Before we dive headfirst into Zeta Halo, I would be thrilled if you pounded that big red button, as well as like and comment on this video. Here at Fun My Life, I release new videos a few times a week regarding video game reviews and impressions. If you enjoy the content I put out, I would love to have you part of the team. Please let me know what your thoughts are about Halo Infinite in the comments below, and let's have a good discussion about this highly anticipated game. Now with that out of the way, let's get into my thoughts on Halo Infinite. FML! Halo Infinite picks up after the events of Halo 5, a game that many players were not very happy with, in large part due to its storyline. Here in Halo Infinite, a lot of that criticism about the previous game's story has been addressed here for the most part, focusing entirely on the one and only Master Chief. It feels great to be reacquainted with the Chief, as he undergoes some solid evolution in this game as he tries to move on from traumatic experiences from his past. Voice actor Steve Downes does an exceptional job at delivering quality voice work for Master Chief in Infinite, as the protagonist is one with few words, but his words land with undeniable impact once muttered.
But this wasn't the mission.
The missions change. They always do.
Are you sure?
An expert on prolonged silence and knowing when to say the few words he needs to say, Halo Infinite does an excellent job at bringing Master Chief back into the spotlight. Equally great is the character performance for Cortana and the weapon, who both play integral roles in the storyline to Infinite as well, with much of the game's story establishing the bond between the new character, titled Weapon, and Master Chief. The two go through their predictable ups and downs as they navigate working together as a pair amidst a dire threat. I thought the story was simply fine. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it corrected a lot of what I didn't like about Halo 5, so I am right in the middle on this one. I certainly enjoyed the story focusing much more on Master Chief and his new relationship with the weapon, and I liked a few of the scenes with Cortana thrown in there as to cement Master Chief's undeniable pain from moving away from his former partner. But just like the foundation of the game itself, I found the story to be unfinished. Unfinished is the word that I would use to describe Halo Infinite, but I'll get there in a second. The story begins after the events of Halo 5, with Master Chief brutalized by Atriox, the leader of the Banished, which are a group of rebels including a variety of alien races. Master Chief becomes rescued by Echo 216, a UNSC pilot, and against the pilot's will, he transports Master Chief to Zeta Halo, the location where the vast majority of the game takes place. Echo 216 is another important character introduced to Halo Infinite, and he gets a lot of screen time as he has some very important character growth and is woven nicely into the flow of the story.
It's told you. We lost. We need help, not heroics.
In general, the story is a lot more human now, showing the pain and loss of grief and of losing people important to one another, while also trying to move on and find meaning in life. This more grounded storytelling approach is very welcome to the Halo franchise, and I hope they continue with this presentation going forward. The game's earlier moments do an excellent job with setting up the story and giving the player primary motivation of hunting down and killing Atriox and ridding the Halo of banished influence. The game's first hour or so is very much what fans of the franchise are familiar with, having the player navigate linear, tighter levels as they battle through rooms of enemies, looting weapons off fallen corpses, and making the player feel like a badass the entire time. The player can pick up various audio logs that adds layers to the story, and they do a good job at fleshing out some of the motivations of the game's characters, including many of the game's antagonists. Right at the start of the game, Master Chief is gifted the wonderful ability to grapple to any object within reach with the grapple shot. This ability grants more traversal opportunities for the player to experiment with, and the mechanic is very satisfying. Master Chief can grapple to ledges, walls, floors, and other geometry to close the distance between enemies or to simply get out of harm's way. Players can also use the grapple shot to pull themselves towards enemies, resulting in a satisfying takedown. Master Chief can utilize the hook to pull in nearby weapons and objects that can be used against enemies. The grapple shot is an awesome addition to the Halo franchise, as it adds more ways for the player to traverse the game's environments and further expands the game's combat. At various points in the campaign, the player comes across other suit enhancements, including boost thrusters, allowing the player to quickly boost side to side to avoid incoming attacks, a threat sensor that allows the player to see enemies between walls, and the drop wall, a gadget that props up a wall, allowing Master Chief to shoot through it while stopping enemies' fire from breaching. These abilities do a fantastic job elevating the great FPS combat that Halo is known for, and solidifies Halo Infinite as the best playing Halo game in the franchise by a long shot.
But what if it's a friend?
It isn't.
The first big deviation from the traditional Halo format comes in the form of a boss fight. And while Halo 5 technically had some boss fight moments sprinkled in, the ones in Halo Infinite are a lot better and are more optimized to Halo Infinite's larger arenas. These bosses have an accompanying health bar, so once you see that bar over an enemy's head, that's your tell to really kick some ass. I like these bosses, and I felt like the game definitely benefited by adding these encounters as they embellished the game's pacing. Many boss fights have numerous phases, forcing the player to adapt new strategies to take down these foes. After the first boss fight, the player is finally set free in the semi-open world 343 has spent many a year creating, and the first impression is fantastic.
Look at this place. It's so full of more monsters coming to kill us.
The sense of scale is the largest any Halo game has ever been, and it really takes me back to the very first Halo, where many of the game's levels take place in large, sprawling environments. Even though I wasn't playing the game on its max settings, the game does look pretty nice, with Zeta Halo's massive trees dwarfed by the impressive towering mountains that dot the landscape. The game isn't truly an open world game, as many of its areas are broken up into separate sections. These sections, however, are massive, and the player can easily get lost exploring the landscape to rid the banished presence from the land. When tackling the open world, players have options as to how they want to finish the fight on Zeta Halo, which is a welcome change from the more linear approach of the previous games in the franchise. One of the most important things to do is to clear up enemy fobs, which act as bases that the player can fast travel to and from once clearing them. Once Master Chief has taken over a fob on the map, the game's map will come into view and highlight any important areas in the nearby vicinity that the player can go to. Such areas can be other enemy encampments, taking out banished mini-bosses, rescuing fellow UNSC Marines, and a few more. Many mission objectives are also clearly labeled on the map. The mini-bosses that players can choose to kill are very important, as each mini-boss drops a unique weapon that players can use and redeem at a captured outpost. These weapons are some of the most powerful weapons in the game, and are especially helpful when trying to take down some of the larger vehicles in the game, and are also highly effective against fast-moving vehicles like ghosts and banshees. At first, this newfound freedom was thrilling, and I greatly appreciated the new change in pace that the game threw at me. It was both familiar, harkening back to the very first trilogy of Halo games, where the maps were considerably larger with ample space to drive warthogs, banshees, and other vehicles through its maps, yet at the same time new, with Infinite's new focus on giving players meaningful objectives and side opportunities that reward Master Chief with valuable upgrades. I spent my time on the first section of Zeta completing as much optional content as I could, capturing enemy bases, killing mini-bosses, freeing up my fellow Marines, and collecting Spartan cores, an item that players can use to upgrade Master Chief's abilities in the menu. These Spartan cores are very important, as they are used to level up your abilities, like your grapple shot and shield capacity. Such an upgrade for the grapple shot includes the addition of inflicting lightning and stun damage to an enemy if your shot connects. As beneficial as it was capturing bases and finding Spartan cores, however, it wasn't until I progressed further into the story that made me realize that the game world and the activities on offer were a lot more hollow than I thought, and offered little incentive to keep me wanting to participate in its optional content. You see, the biggest complaint that I have for Halo Infinite is in its repetitive nature to nearly everything the game throws at you. The first area, although majestic and fun to explore, begins to look not so special the moment you arrive to the second area on Zeta Halo. The game repeatedly throws at the player the same environments, the same interior designs, very similar main mission objectives that always task the player to destroy some silos, to bring down an energy barrier, get inside, get some power cells nearby to power up a terminal, to an arena to fight a boss, and rinse and repeat that process over and over. Upon realizing this, I lost most of my motivation to scout out enemy bases, fobs, Spartan cores, etc. Where is the other terrain that made the other games so memorable? Deserts, jungles, snow-capped mountains, seaside enclaves, and many more are all missing here, and the game would have been so much more interesting and compelling to explore had there been more variety in its open world. This is an area where I feel this game just feels unfinished. When I say it's incredibly repetitive, I really mean it. There is absolutely nothing about the other areas of Zeta Halo that aren't part of the very first area when it comes to side content and changes in scenery. The same admittedly beautiful mountainous landscapes are all that you see when it comes to the nature presented in Halo Infinite, and its interiors don't change throughout the game as well. The alien technology-filled metallic interiors of enemy structures, although completely making sense, all look the same, and its shiny corridors made me get a feeling of deja vu as I traveled through them, popping the question, haven't I been here before? Halo Infinite made me immediately think of the Ubisoft template for open world games, creating large land masses for the player to traverse, while offering very little objective variety and side content to make doing absolutely everything worthwhile. It was at this point, nearly halfway through the game, that I decided to forego doing everything I could do on the map and instead focus on doing the objectives that rewarded me with Spartan cores, killing mini-bosses, and capturing some fob bases along the way. Due to the grand scale of the game world, I felt like this would have been much more fun to experience the game's vast environments with a friend. For the first time in the history of Halo, Halo Infinite did not release with co-op for its single-player campaign, which is a big blow to the fans who grew up playing Halo games with their friends. Although 343 has said that they plan to implement co-op in May of 2022, nearly 5 months after its release, the lack of having co-op play as an option from the start, in addition to the immense lack of variety to the campaign, leaves me thinking that this game was released a bit early. Halo Infinite has had a difficult development, to say the least, with the team initially trying to release it last year in 2020 as a launch title for the Xbox Series X and S, but was met with overwhelmingly negative feedback as the gameplay shown for the game did not look up to par with industry standards and what fans were expecting. Flash forward to the present day, and we finally got Halo Infinite with a functional free-to-play multiplayer mode, but really lacks a coherent direction with its single-player campaign. Even with the co-op added, I don't think it will change a lot of minds about the repetitive structure of the campaign. The incredible variety of environments the series has been known for has me longing for the series' older titles, and as nice as it is to not fight the Prometheans anymore, good riddance.
I hope you had the time of your life.
This game's hook to its semi-open world environments just don't stay with me long enough to make me look forward to revisiting this section of Zeta Halo. I will absolutely dive back into Halo Infinite once the co-op has been implemented, as I will welcome having a friend fill up the empty space on my Warthog. I will also relish the chance to be accompanied in this admittedly lonely adventure, and Halo is always more fun with other people. Another feature not available at launch is the ability to select missions to replay. If players are aiming to 100% the game and clean up any missing collectibles during main missions, players are currently unable to do so. This is a feature that is currently being worked on by the developers, and one that I hope comes to the game soon, as having to start the entire game over is asking a lot for players who just missed a few collectibles in inaccessible main mission areas. With all that criticism out of the way, Halo Infinite certainly does many things right. Like I said about the direction of the campaign storyline, having a more human and Master Chief centered tale is absolutely the right step forward for the franchise. In addition, this is easily the best playing Halo game yet. The combat and gunplay in this game is incredible, and the weapon variety on offer here is truly fantastic. All of the staple guns and weaponry return in Infinite, along with some new weapons that are a lot of fun to experiment with. I especially like seeing the series transition to the open world-like environments, but the game would greatly benefit by having more variety to its missions, a problem that many open world games have. By also including more environments to the game besides the two on offer here would go tremendous ways to extend the scale, wonder, and flow of the campaign. What's here in Halo Infinite is certainly a step in the right direction for Halo, but I believe its execution missed the mark with this entry. The campaign feels like it should be part one of something much larger, and the open world elements lose their appeal after a while. I feel like this game is just unfinished, as the developers probably had more ambitious intentions with this game but realized that it would take forever to release a game with their original vision, scaling things down to accommodate a hastier release. That being said, there are still so many things to like about this game, including its incredible combat and gunplay, to a better story this time around, to the fun collectibles and audio logs and skulls that impact your play experience, to suit upgrades, etc. Although I didn't enjoy it as much as I would have liked, I am happy that many fans of the series are getting plenty of enjoyment with this release, as we have waited more than 6 years for this to finally land. It wasn't the return I was hoping it to be with the Halo franchise, but Master Chief plays better than ever, and a story centralized around him, and with some fun to be had in its repetitive open world areas, there is still some excellent fun to be had here. I will be releasing more videos about Halo Infinite in the coming months, trying out its new updates and co-op to the game. Let me know what you have to say about my thoughts here, as I'd love to know if you enjoyed your time with this game. As always, remember to smash that big red button and like this video. Please take care of yourself this holiday season, and I sincerely hope you have a great rest of the year. I look forward to seeing you back in my next video. Take care, everyone. FML!